Welcome to Africa Answers, a series featuring young African leaders unpacking topical issues affecting Africa and proposing solutions to those challenges. My name is Silindile Mlilo and I'm your host. Today in studio I have Theana Msolomba. She's from Malawi. She's a financial literacy educator and works around issues of sustainable finance. I hope I got that right, Theana. Welcome. Today we'll be talking all things finance, and I'm excited to unpack this conversation. So before we start, I think maybe from a general level, let's start talking about what is finance, right? When we talk about finance, most of the time we hear about financial literacy. What are those, and where are we right now? Are people really getting into this idea and understanding of how to make money work for them?
Let me start by saying that money cannot be divorced from everyday life, whether it be that you're young, you're old, or whatever stage of life you are. So with that in mind, then you can appreciate that it is important for people to learn about money. So when we talk about issues of financial education, essentially what we are saying is that we want each and every person to have the money knowledge, skills, and attitudes necessary for them to make effective financial decisions or choices. So this includes issues of financial planning, financial management, issues of savings, investments, so on and so forth. But essentially, it's very important to remember that each person requires financial education.
So in terms of financial education that you mentioned, because I hear a lot about financial literacy, and coming from the African context, from your experience, where are young people, people in general, are people understanding what it is to understand how to make money work for you, or how to use your money even?
Honestly, we are lagging so much behind, but it's not only in Africa, even in other parts of the world. What we have not done in Africa is that we have not incorporated financial education in our mainstream curriculum as a subject, a standalone subject. What we are doing is that we are taking bits and pieces of financial literacy and incorporating them in already existing subjects like mathematics or social studies. And that is good. That is a starting point. But if something as important as money, I believe that it needs to have emphasis. It needs to be emphasized just as mathematics is emphasized, because you will find that in the African context, because of this lack of emphasis on money, we are producing graduates that have no knowledge of financial matters or financial choices. So we are graduating and then conducting a trial and error session in the financial space, which is very dangerous. And at this point, where one of Africa's major problems is poverty, we cannot even risk this possibility of people playing trial and error. This time, we have to be getting it right. So it is very important that all African governments must seriously reconsider this position of saying, can we at least put emphasis on teaching our populations about money? Because as it stands now, the people that are very conversant with issues of money are people who have studied an accounting-related subject. For instance, economics, or accounting, or maybe sustainable finance. But if you have been a person who have studied either medicine, law, or education, you are literally blank. So you are going outside there without the knowledge of money, which to me is a problem.
Yeah. So like for somebody watching, like myself, right? You rightly said, some of these subjects were not incorporated into our curriculum, and it's only when you start working, for example, that you start realizing, okay, I need to start saving, and beyond saving, I need to start investing. So I know that through your organization, Koala Capital, you offer financial literacy skills, right, to equip people on how to understand money, firstly, and how to use money, right, and make money work for them. What would you say for somebody who wants to start understanding the world of money? Where do you start?
Interesting. It's good that you highlighted my work with the Koala Capital. And what actually triggered my motivation to start Koala Capital and building capacity in terms of understanding how money works, or the general space or the general discourse of financial education, was essentially that I had been working in the finance space for over 8 years, and seeing what was transpiring there, it sort of like really gave me a clear indication of how people are struggling to deal with issues as pertaining to finance. And so the starting point for me was to offer people basic level financial education. Do you understand the concepts of financial planning, savings, investments? Do you know the investments that are operating in your financial markets? Just really basic stuff. And I focused mostly on young people and women and people with disabilities, because I actually realized that these are the people that traditionally are not linked to dealing with issues of finance. In the African context, finance has been relegated to a man responsibility. And because of that, these three groups, men, women, youth, and people with disabilities, are not as in touch with money. But of course, we see the trends are changing. We see the female economy getting center stage, and that is something good to watch. So to go down, to narrow down on the question of saying, where should somebody start? I think a person should start from equipping themselves with financial knowledge, skills, and attitudes. With emphasis here, I should place on attitudes. The African context is suffering from a problem of attitude. We have grown up in a context where we have been constantly told that Africa is poor. With that mindset, you grow up thinking that there is a scarcity mindset. Therefore, we are not charging forward as young people, even as Africans, to go and explore the possibilities that we can uncover finance, or we can cover in entrepreneurship. And that in itself is a problem. We need to, first of all, defeat the poverty mentality in our minds if we have to push forward. That's just one limiting belief, like one attitude that you need to embrace. But you also need to embrace the attitude of planning. A person who does not plan has actually decided that they want to fail. And one of the things that we should start embracing and even teaching the young people is financial planning. Then financial planning, we should move to financial management. Then from financial management, we need to move to financial or wealth creation. And that, to me, simply, as I put it, is every person must learn how to make money, manage the money, and multiply the money, what I call the 3 M's. So if in your life you can just tell yourself that I need to learn how to make the money, how to manage the money, and then how to multiply the money, I think that you are on a road to financial success.
Can you maybe give us practical examples for someone who's, these 3 M's is something that, I think it's a great concept, right? When you are talking about how to make the money, manage the money, and multiply the money, what do you mean?
Okay, so let's start with the concept of making the money. So when you are talking about making money is you recognizing ideas that are operating in your society. Right now, businesses are moving from just saying, I want to be profit driven, but they're moving towards solving problems. So when you are thinking of making money, look at your communities or your context and understand what are the problems that exist in this society. When you uncover those problems and you as a young African provide solutions, you are now beginning a journey of making money. So you can make money in different ways. You can make money through working, you can make money through entrepreneurship, you can also make money through investing in assets. These are the 3 major ways a person can make money. Now, when we move to the second concept of saying managing money, this is now financial management. Financial management is a whole spectrum where you are now having to plan your resources. So you have issues of budgeting, you have issues of debt repayments. So here is really where the nitty-gritty goes into, and how your investment plans. Every person must at least have a budget, a monthly budget. And I think when it comes to financial planning, let me go back a bit. It must start with financial goals. Where do you want to go? What's your roadmap? You do not reach a place where you yourself have not envisioned. So each and every year we hear people saying, my New Year resolutions. Yes, but what are your financial goals for that year? And every financial goal must be threefold. At least you must have short-term goals, long-term goals, and medium-term goals and long-term goals. By just the definition themselves, the short-term is something you'll be able to achieve within 30 days. So put a goal that you can achieve in 30 days, and medium term, something you can achieve within 6 months, and a long-term goal, something you can achieve within a year or at least 5 years. Putting it practically, as a young person, what can you achieve in the first 30 days? Open a savings account. It's as simple as that. It means if that was a goal for a person who has just graduated from secondary school, that's a good financial goal. And a medium-term goal in this case would be, okay, start investing or start saving 10,000 kwacha every month and achieve 60,000. At this point, you have now gotten to a medium-term goal. And then a long-term goal is, I want to now start investing in assets. So what do? You start to structure a business, because that is now giving you a roadmap to where you want to go, and that will guide every young person. So those are sort of like the 5 M's. And in concluding to now multiplying the money is really the art of wealth creation. And I think as Africans, we, especially young Africans, we are not really mastering this art of wealth creation because we are not knowledgeable about assets. When I go as Koala Capital to capacitate young people and ask them the basic question, do you know the assets that are in your context, in your financial industry? They are so blank. But so to expose them in this Africa Answers series, first, mostly, these are the traditional assets. The first asset is obviously a business. If you look at rich people in the world, you will recognize that most of them have gotten rich through a business. So it's something that we must, and you see now an emphasis in Africa or in many parts of the world about entrepreneurship. That's why, because entrepreneurship is the #1 asset. And then the second one is obviously real estate. When you invest in properties, rental properties, either commercial or residential, that is the second asset. Then the third one is commodities. So we have gold, we have silver, and so on and so forth. And then we also have government bonds or government securities, which are stocks and bonds. And then we have high earning savings account. These are not ordinary savings account, but high earning savings account. So you will notice that in the African context, people, when you ask them, are you in the financial sector? They would say yes, but what they're dealing with is an ordinary savings account or even a mobile wallet, which means they haven't even started the journey of wealth creation because they have not started to play with assets at this point. So it's very important to say, yes, when you should know the assets that are in your space. And obviously, as innovation is going on, we're now hearing about crypto, bitcoins. Those are all coined as assets. So whatever, simply put, whatever is able to make money and put it in your pocket, that is an asset. Whatever is able, whatever takes the money out of your pocket is a liability. And these two concepts are also something that I think we should be able to be conscious of every time.
Yeah. So, I mean, you make a lot of interesting points, but I want to bring it down a bit, right? Because earlier on you mentioned that it's important for us to inculcate financial literacy in schools. And when I was hearing you speak, I was also thinking that even from the home level,
yes,
right? I think it's also important that young kids start being exposed to using money, right? Like I said, for me, I think I started really engaging with money when I started working, when I started earning my own money. But I think like those fundamental skills that you talk about should also, in tandem with the curriculum, also, be things that parents start, exposing their kids to. Just small pocket money, see how you make money out of it or how you save it, etc. And you also spoke about investments. And I think from the context where I'm coming from, right? Growing up, for me, savings was the thing. So you need to save your money for emergencies, for days when things are tough, right? That's what you hear a lot, right? And I think a lot of us take out these policies to buffer us in terms of crisis, like your pension, your life insurance, etc. Let's talk about, let's get into savings versus investments, because I think a lot of us really don't understand. A lot of us are still in the savings. You need to save, that's more comfortable, right? What do you have to say about that?
Okay, so first of all, I want to anchor your ideas on saying, let's start financial literacy in young children. I really want to agree with you on that. And actually, even suggest one or two things that parents or even young Africans can begin to do. Just in incorporating a piggy bank in your home for your little child is already a way to start introducing money. Even just now, even showing them notes as you have traveled to Europe or different countries, come back home with the notes and actually play a game. What is this? They should recognize money. They should have a personal relationship with money, recognize money from the US, from Europe. That is also another way of introducing money. But there's also a game, Monopoly. Monopoly is also another way that you as a parent can decide to sit with your children and then introduce money to them. So I just wanted to make sure, because you raised a very important part, that parents have got a crucial role to play in as far as making sure that the kids are also are having these financial skills and attitudes. When you are financially planning in a home, sit down as a family. Do not leave the kids out. They should see how you are creating a budget, how you are planning the finances. That will then transfer to them, because kids are always willing to see and emulate what their parents are doing. So that's very important. So now moving on to your next question, which is saying savings, investments. Savings, like I said, ordinary savings accounts are places where you park your money. There isn't much that you're getting from a savings account. And there's little interest, but it's hinged on the fact that the higher the risk, the higher the return. The lower the risk, the lower the return. So if you look at ordinary savings account in traditional banks, you will notice that there is a low likelihood that you will lose that money. So that means it generally translates to this principle that low risk, low return. So when you are putting your money in a savings account, as much as it is good for security reasons, it does not give you the return, until the higher return. It gives you a lower return. So if there are things that you can do with that money, and let's say putting it in an asset, I would rather advise you put it in an asset than parking it in a savings account. There are things that you put in a savings account. For instance, you mentioned emergency. We call that an emergency fund. So an emergency fund is created where, as Silindile, you put 3 months or 6 months of your monthly requirement, financial requirement, away on a savings account. That's what you call an emergency fund. So that is an acceptable way to save. Put 3 to 6 months away of your monthly requirement in a savings account, most preferably a high earning savings account, not an ordinary savings account. And then all the transactions, daily transactions that you need, which you have calculated, then you can put them in ordinary savings account. But other than that, I would really let everyone be interested in putting their money in an asset, because that's where money is generated and not in a savings account.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what assets? So if someone wants to start to get into investments, right, where do they start? Especially for young people, whether from all over the world, anyone watching who says, okay, I want to start getting into investments. How does one start? Where do you even begin?
Okay. So the way to begin your journey to investment is not to run before you walk. So the first thing that you need to do is basically create an emergency fund. That's the first thing, as we have already discussed, because that buffers you to say, when I start investing, now I don't have to go back and then be in an emergency and take the money out. The second thing is to clear out debt. So if you're a young person, you have debt, clear that debt, or at least understand how you can clear that debt. That's your journey to starting investing. And then the third thing now is to aggressively invest in assets. You have cleared your debt towards liabilities. The only debt you are accepting is a debt towards assets. You're taking money to invest in an asset. If it's not an asset, you should clear that debt. Then the third step is for you to now aggressively invest in assets. Why do I use the word aggressively? It's because as a young person, if you aggressively invest in assets, you are securing your financial future, because assets in their nature have got an ability to make money, create money whilst you do nothing. Even in your death, assets create money. And that's a beauty about asset. So what now I would encourage every youth is look at your financial industry in the context you exist, and also consider globalization at play. you will then understand what are the assets that you can work with. My advice at that point is that never invest before you take your time to understand the investment tool and the return on that investment. If you do not fully understand, find a fiduciary. A fiduciary is a person who gives you financial advice for your good, not for their good, for your good. So find a fiduciary, be it a friend or somebody who's very acquainted in finance, to actually look at with you on those assets that you have uncovered before you make the investment. This is a very, very important step for every person, a beginner investor. It is your duty. Investments are not free from losses. So if you just decide, oh, I want to start investing right now, and you rush, you might then end up losing all your money or what you have so far gotten, and then think that investment is a bad way. But do your due diligence, understand your investment before you invest in it.
Yeah. So when I introduced you, I introduced you as someone who's working within the sustainable finance space, right? What is sustainable finance? Can you unpack that for us?
Yes. So let's start from the word financing. So if from what we have been talking about here, if you look at financing, it means an entity, either be it a traditional bank or any other entity, is giving money to either an organization or a project for it to run that project. So basically that's the financing aspect. You're taking money to fund a certain project. So the issues of sustainability therefore come in when we now have considerations over the environment, the society, but also governance issues. And that's where together we are calling it sustainable finance. So traditionally, banks were mostly profit-driven. They give you money, and after you have finished your project, you give them back with interest, purely profit-driven. But that has changed, and that's when we have seen the evolution of sustainable financing. So there are different aspects to sustainable financing which we can talk about. Yeah.
What are those? We might as well quickly get into those.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So when you look at sustainable finance, think of it as a spectrum where you're starting from the profit-driven financing, as I've already described it. And then afterwards, the second level is the ECG level, where we're looking at a person investing after considering environment, society, and governance. So a project is actually assessed on these parameters, and then it is able to, the banking sector or the financing organization is able to sieve out those that are not able to meet these parameters. The third aspect, the third level of the sustainable finance is the sustainable impact financing. So what does that mean? It means that these organizations are actually looking at it from both sustainability, but also impact. So there are organizations that are going to embrace sustainability factors, but also the issue of how much impact you're making. So to put that in context for you, look at a tobacco company. So in a tobacco company might be able to meet all the sustainability factors, environment, society, and governance. You looking at the organization itself, they might be able to have attributes of meeting these parameters. But when you look at impact, you will see that tobacco has many effects on health, and therefore it might fail on this third level of financing, because then the impact is negative towards the society and towards the people in the society. The fourth level is impact in financing. So in this one, the focus is on impacts. You are focusing on the impact, but also the profitability, but at the same time, your mindset really is on impact. So in this, using the same tobacco example, it means this one, then the tobacco company would fall flat because the impact on society is negative. The third one is the philanthropy financing, where now they totally disregard the concept of profit, but rather they focus on the greater good for the community. So all the parameters are at play, but now they are making sure that profit is not what is driving them, unlike in the other aspects where sometimes it was profit that was driving them.
Yeah. But like listening to you talk, I'm wondering, can finance be sustainable? Like, are we seeing examples of that beginning to take place?
We could say yes. And to me, what I would like to emphasize is the sustainability mindset. The sustainability mindset is something that every organizations, governments, but also at an individual level, you must be conscious of. And that sustainability mindset is one that calls forth that, first of all, you need to be aware of the connectedness of us as individuals, us as governments, us as in the environments, and all the little nitty-gritties or projects, that how they are so connected that they cannot be disjointed from the other. And what impacts this project or the impact that would be derived from one project can actually have ripple effects on other projects. And that's the connectedness that I talk about. For instance, if we establish a mining company and they have now polluted the water, it means that there is now a connection between the water and maybe their mining corporation and also the people in that environment. So that connectedness is what people should be conscious of, because if you are conscious of that, then maybe you can move to the second level of mindset of sustainability, which is social justice and fairness. When we talk about this mindset, it's basically you understanding how your project impacts your community, your environment, and with issues of also issues of governance, and then really minimizing externalities. And in this regard, how are you as a player able to minimize the impact, the negative impact on other people, so that all of you can be able to enjoy the project or the sustainability of whatever that is you're doing. The third level of it all is innovation and creativity. Sustainability cannot be divorced from innovation and creativity and change. So sustainable finance or sustainable development itself calls upon the world to be innovative, creative, and embrace change. The fourth aspect is transparency and accountability. And we're seeing organizations like EU calling forth big organizations to say, you must be transparent and accountable, therefore show us what you're doing with regards to sustainable development or sustainable financing. And that way, when we have those big guns calling transparency and accountability to the fore, we are assured that everybody is now moving towards sustainable development or sustainable finance. This whole sustainability concept is being founded or grounded on the sustainable development goals.
Yeah.
So they're looking at projects, looking at them on the basis to say, what do we want to just make impact now, or we want to make impact over a long period of time, where now people will see that there is a continuity of what is happening.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that we're starting to speak about this, or starting to have this conversation. But I would like to believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that in the developing countries we are lagging behind, not only in Africa, because we've seen a lot of multinational companies being criticized for, being profit driven and not looking at the environmental effects or the people on the ground. For example, if you look at issues around workers, who work for these high-end fashion industries, who are basically working in hard conditions for peanuts, right? So I think we still have a long way to go, but I'm glad that the discussions are beginning to take place.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if there are policies that, at a national level that are being instituted in different developing countries to hold such organizations accountable, to ensure that there is the profit part also goes hand in hand with sustainability. Okay, so to move on, we are talking about finance. We're talking about how we need to be responsible, how we need to make money work, to have a plan, to have a goal, right? But when we're speaking about the youth, one thing that comes to mind, which is a global phenomenon, a global issue, is high unemployment, right? A lot of young people are out of work. And I guess the first thing would be, let's innovate, get into business and stuff. But not everybody is set out to be, an entrepreneur, for example. So what is your take, for example, on young people someone who's struggling to make ends meet, but would also like to be financially, I don't know, what's the word? Stable, or financially literate, and in terms of ensuring that they actually invest and save. How do we break that down from like coming down to reality now? Where would that person start?
Not just the young person, but every person should start from the place of capability. You need to be capable in issues of financial knowledge, skills, and attitudes before you even have access. Our major problem in Africa is capability first. We do not have the capability, financial capability. So we lack the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes before we even get to the access. And what I'm seeing now in the African context is that we are pushing access before capability, which is a dangerous move. It's like,
what do you mean by that?
It's like you giving me money without teaching me how to use it. You giving me a digging hole without you having to tell me how I should use that hole. So what will happen is that I will go on the field and do things haphazardly, and that will not give me a bumper return on my production. First of all, we need to ensure that African youths have got financial capability. They have the knowledge, they have the skill, and they have the attitude towards finance. And that is our departure point. Then we give them access. With that access, they will be able to do different things, whether it be in creating self-employment, whether it be it entrepreneurship, whether it be investing in assets. That's the goal. And I'll give this example so that you can really see how if we overstep capability rushing to access, it might be a problem. You look at people who win lottery. How many stories have you heard of a person who has won millions of euros and then they end up poor next year or 2 years from there? It's because they didn't have capability. They had the access, but they didn't have capability. So they misused the money. And at that point, that becomes dangerous. So I'm seeing a lot of programs, government programs in different poor countries or developing countries saying we are giving access to youth, finance to youth, but have you given them capability? No. And they give capability as a matter of ticking a box. No, we taught them for a week. Financial capability is not for a week. It's an ongoing process. Financial education is not a once-off bullet pill that you give someone. It is a discourse that goes on from young age to adulthood, even old age. That's why pensioners are also supposed to continue learning about what financial capability, and especially now in the age of technology, it's very important that all of us must be kept abreast, because now the capability I was talking about here is basically the traditional knowledge and skills. But now with the digital age, we're seeing payment systems, we're seeing cryptos, we're seeing sophistication in the financial space, and that sophistication needs to have a person who is able to engage with the level of sophistication in finance as it progresses.
Yeah. So when we speak about financial literacy again, do you think it's important for the information or the knowledge to be tailored towards different contexts? Because I think that sometimes when you hear financial literacy, it's at a high-end level, right? We're talking about savings, investments, and all these terminologies that are very important and people should start applying, right? But also coming back down also on the ground.
That's right.
We have women, and I know you're passionate about women,
Yes.
as I am. We have women who are working from hand to mouth to feed their families,
That's
right? To provide for their families. And sometimes when you speak to these women, I was on the ground in July speaking to women who are basket weavers in the northwestern district of Botswana. And these women are trying to enter the ecosystem, the ecotourism space, right? So that they can use their craft to basically provide for their family and create sustainable income.
That's right.
But it's a bit difficult. Also, COVID played a role, but it's also a bit difficult for them to penetrate that space, right? So what happens is that the money that they make, they end up using it, right? One even told me, I sell a basket, and then I have to buy a school uniform, I have to buy soap, I have to buy milk, right? So when we're talking about financial literacy, where do we even start with people in that situation? Because immediately talk about investment, it goes out of,
That's right.
Yeah.
So I have come across what we're calling a poverty graduation holistic model. It was first pioneered by BRAC in 2002 in Bangladesh. It advances that you need big push policies. So the big push policy for people like this, it means that first of all, you are looking at food security, and then asset or self-employment. So what will happen is that, as you have rightly said, the main consideration for such a woman is food security. So unless you are able to support her food security, she will not think of asset. So what these programs, the poverty graduation model is doing is that when it finds those kind of women, what it's doing is that it provides support to food security, to ensure food security, and then gives them a big push. How do they give a big push? They give them the asset. It's a capital intensive approach, but it is sustainable in the long run, because you will see that the investment that you put will literally catapult the woman into now moving away from survival to investing. And that is something that we must consider. And it's something that I think we must advance to the Southern African governments, especially, to say, look at this approach, the poverty graduation approach. It is a multi-sectoral approach where you are looking at a person as an holistic individual, and that can catapult them to a different sustainable livelihood. So in answering your question, I would say, yes, you need to tailor make your financial literacy to the context and also to the level of the people that you're dealing with. When I teach young people, when I teach women, when I teach people with disabilities, these are two different types of people, and I therefore have to pitch it at the right level. I have to pitch it for the context that they exist in, but I also have to pitch in consideration with the challenges that they are facing. For instance, when I taught the people with disabilities, I was very clear to them that there are many policies in government, in the Malawian government, that are promoting them to access finance. But when they access the finance, when they are now being required to start repaying the loans or to repay, they start using their disability. And that in itself is a wrong aspect. It's a wrong attitude, because then it will bring back the notion to say, this is not going to be sustainable, because as the government is doing that, it is assuming that you as a person with disability will use the money, bring it back, so that another person with disability also uses it. But if you now start using your disability at the point of repayment, that's 40. You should have started using the disability at the point of access. So to me, I also feel like that's, like I said, it's an attitude problem. So we need to ensure that when I go in those contexts, I challenge those kind of ideas to say, no, if you are not able to use this as a barrier to access it, you used it as an opener to access finance, then continue to use it in repaying the financial loan that you acquired. Yeah. But it's very important to tailor-make our financial literacy programs to the African context. Otherwise, we might be talking about things that are not relevant to our societies. So I've seen World Bank funding a lot of different projects towards financial literacy, even in my country. And I would want that those people that are engaged in those projects should really look into tailor-making it to the context of their specific countries, but also considering globalization and how it is playing into this whole financial space.
That's great. And I think I really liked the point you made earlier, that financial literacy is an ongoing thing, because we live in a world where you need money to survive, right? Not only to survive, but to also have access to opportunities. So it can't be a once-off thing. But now that you've been in Europe, Theana, and you're about to wrap up your time here, and obviously the Western world is more advanced when it comes to digitization compared to where we are coming from. In terms of finance, where do you see the link between, the digital world and finance? And what are the things that you're taking away from here that you want to bring back home, or that you want to see happening when you get back to Malawi, or even within the African context broadly?
Yeah. But really, I think the finance and the digital space right now cannot be divorced. And the sooner the young person in Africa recognizes this, the sooner they will build capability in both finance, but also technology. And that's very important. In what I have seen, in fact, in the first few weeks when I got here, I was so fascinated with different things. Of course, they were not only technological and not only in the financial space, but just in general. And one of the things was how they have embraced different technologies to ensure that there's continuous economic activity in general. We find in the Malawian context, for instance, you find that at around 6 o'clock when it's dark, life begins to stop. And money doesn't stop. Investors, money doesn't sleep. You sleep, but people who understand money know that money does not sleep. Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook does not stop making money when he sleeps. It's still making money. So the moment you go to sleep, literally you are telling yourself that now it's not time to make money. There is no limitation to the time you can make money. And that's something that I've embraced in the European space, that they have found ways and means of putting this into their society to ensure that economic activity continues to occur in spite of a person's presence, a physical person being present. So you have seen a lot of dispensers, even in as far as a pharmacy. You can actually go to a dispenser. You can access money. We have now. I have an online bank, Wise. All those are innovations, contactless payments and so on. I mean, it's just mind blowing to see how much they have embraced technology. But I would also want to say that, in as much as I've seen that this issue of financial capability is not only a problem in the African context. It's a problem in Europe, it's a problem in America, it's a problem that has emanated from our education system. This education was tailor-made to build us as employees and not with creators. So the only way they wanted to introduce us to money was for us to get a job. And therefore, now that we are recognizing that that's not the best way to make money, this whole system is under challenge, both from Europe, in Africa, and in America. But the people that are now catching up very quickly and building capability of their populations, they are the ones that are progressing forward. As you can see Asia, you can see Europe as well, you can even see America. They have not done it so well, but they have understood that this cannot be divorced, and therefore they are doing their level best. So I think that in Africa, if we decided that we are going to take this seriously, you might begin to see an active economic citizenship from the young continent of Africa that will make a lot of difference.
Thank you, Theana. This has been great. I've learned so much. I'm sure I'm going to use some of the nuggets for myself as well. It's really been great talking to you, and wishing you all the best in your next endeavors, and looking forward to seeing you more in this financial space.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.